Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. In this video, we'll be going through the AFLW midfielders, going through the premiums, the mid prices, as well as the rookies, talking strategy and structure. I know particularly in the last couple of days, I've had discussions with multiple people about the sort of structure and everything around the whole side for us, but definitely the midfield, I'm pretty confident in the structure that I've got at the moment with it, and we'll go through that with and sort of talk through the different types of structures. I think there are sort of maybe two, if not three different structures that teams will have. But anyway, let's jump into this video. So first of all, before we jump into the women's midfielders, I just wanted to put on the agenda the YouTube league there, and if I just paste that into that section there, you can see the invite code for the league is 6Z5NB. I think that's a 0LE. You can it'll be in the description alongside the link itself for you guys to be able to grab up. But anyway, let's jump into the women's now. So we put this on the position and the midfielders, and we go by selected by. I will just quickly touch on it, and then we'll go into the sort of the price brackets. I think is probably the best way to talk about it. So, like we said with the Defender edition, the primos there, you're probably gonna want. Well, it's probably actually different to the Defenders and every other position, I would say. Is that the midfielders, there are quite a few sort of, there's a big differentiation between the top of the line in Marinoff, Garner, Riddell, and others there. If we look at this, and you'll see it if I go price point, you'll see this. If we look at average per year, you'll see this big gap of 30 odd points, but then a big gap here of itself of and you can just see the points per game is quite evidently larger on the midfield compared to every other line. So you want to nail your midfielders because you can be burning quite a lot of points per game to them, because you can even see in the top 7 there is a gap between second and so that's 5th, 6th, 7th. So Gardner is 7th, and she is already 11 points behind the second place. If we go to here and we look at it, it's actually bigger in the Defenders, but if we look at the 3rd through 7, it's a lot closer. And then you'll see in the forward line a similar-esque thing here. You can kind of see it as well with that. So, and then the ruck line is awfully similar, that you basically want to get the ruck line spot on because there's a massive gap. And I think the gap will be smaller this year, but you can kind of see that the gap is rather large in the across all positions between the 2nd, 3rd, and 7th, but it's still rather large in the midfield, and they do have a lot of the points. So you want to be nailing the best midfielders. So Marinoff, I think, is a must-have because of, 1, the matchup she's got, and 2, the captaincy bonus. We talk about it in the men's competition about the captaincy and how it can flip decisions. I don't really buy into it as much just because it's so close at the top end with everyone else scoring, like you may be gaining 2-3 points per game, whereas Marinoff is a genuine 30 point per game jump. Just on what she's averaging compared to other captaincy options. And we expect that outside of Garner and Riddell to potentially close into about 35-40 points. So yeah, there's a chance that Garner and Riddell might even drop a little bit. Obviously Marinoff could drop, but the captaincy bonus there is huge. If you're gaining 30 points per week on the competition, if she's going 140, if she drops 5-10 points per game, the captaincy almost output from her, basically gaining an extra 20-30 points per week, will almost outdo that price drop over time in general there. So that's why I think Marinoff is almost a must-have, especially because she has got St Kilda. And if we look here quietly, I hope that's got the right. Yep. Let's just quickly look at the AFLW and then the fixtures, and then look at Adelaide's fixtures. You'll see that she actually has quite a gettable fixture early. She's got St Kilda, Geelong, GWS in the first three. She could honestly go 140 across the first three here with a spike game in there. She might go something like 150 against St Kilda, 110 against Geelong, and 160 against GWS, and you've suddenly got two absolute spike captaincy scores there. So that's why I'd really look at that with her. And then just, yeah, I think that she's a must because of that reason alone. Garner and Riddell, the news that we've heard out of preseason, and obviously I want to preface this or put almost a disclaimer, I guess, on this, that a lot of the info here is based on sort of observations. We don't have obviously stats yet. We haven't hit that type of preseason yet. So a lot of things do change, but it looks like Garner's going to spend a little bit more time up forward, which could maybe take 5-10 points of upside off of her, or maybe limit her to just a flat 112 again, which would be a little bit annoying. But yeah, so that's why I just want to maybe buy into those type of players there that have a slight little red flag. Riddell, and me and Corey were talking about this and sort of having differing opinions, and I can understand his, is that I don't necessarily like Riddell to start, even with the run that they've got. If we look at this, if we just go to this and go to North Melbourne here quickly, and then get rid of Adelaide. North Melbourne have Geelong, Port, Freo, Collingwood to start. That's a pretty cheap run there. They'll do well. But Riddell, without Garner in the midfield as much, she might get a little bit of a tag. Like Port Adelaide probably won't tag. Freo probably will. Geelong probably won't. And then Collingwood probably won't. So there isn't many tag games in there. But if she's getting a slight tag, does that maybe limit her to a 105? That was sort of my point of view. Whereas he had the sort of point of view that if Garner's not in the midfield, that means that there's an extra potential possession or two for Riddell. And that could mean that she goes 110, 115 and is a good starting pick anyway, because if she goes at her price point or above, they're pretty much nailed on. That's a great selection, especially if they start well. So yeah, that's why that differing views on Riddell. I'm confident in my opinion. Others are in the other opinion, etc. And that's why she is still 13% owned. Charlie Rowbottom, I think, is the one. She's got a cheap draw early and with the West Coast matchup, and she's also just unders in general. I think if we look here again at the Rowbottom, let's just quickly type this up for you guys. So if we grab up Rowbottom here, you can see went 113 in the past, went 106 last year. And so, yeah, I think she's just one that's going to absolutely go back to her best. And her best is 113. If she gets back to that, she'll be on fire. And that is mostly through tackles that she's just dropped. If she can get the tackles back in her game, she's going to be back to her best again. And going back to this, you can see, and McCarthy, I don't really think she, with all the players back in for the likes of Freo, don't like her. Anderson, I don't think she's got much upside. Gardner's definitely one that I've considered in this M4 slot, even though we've got like Bowers at M3 currently, etc., who would slide down to M4. But Gardner's in that discussion of, do I back myself in to pick that fourth midfielder, or do I give myself much more flexibility to go after that fourth midfielder later and pick up the top liner? And that's sort of a structure-based question, which we'll get to in a little bit as well. So there's no one else here really that I personally like too much, to be honest with you, just looking quietly at all of that there. And if we just go here to this one here, I think we've got... yes, so that should be good there. We're just going to go through and grab up some of the bookmarks here. Centra out for a practice game doesn't really mean too much, I would say. What else have we got? Some other random stuff here, and then and then Zippy Fish scored a goal. We'll get to her as well in the rookie section, and then that's pretty much it. And then we've got some halfback news for Carlton's halfback, which is not a midfield question, and I think that was back up to date. So not much on the bookmarked tweets side of things to go off of for this video, so we'll jump straight back into it. And to be honest with you, there isn't many many midfielders that I like in this range. Ella Roberts was one that I was questioning, but she's missing pretty much all the preseason games. So, or there's a chance that she misses all the preseason and is just ready to go for round one, and no one likes to hear that. And then there's no one else here really that I like the look of, to be honest with you. Urim was out as well, so she's one that isn't going to be there, I don't think. You could maybe take a stab on like a Hurley or something going to the next level, but I don't think they will. I think it will be a more combined midfield effort for Sydney. And then looking elsewhere as well, there isn't anyone. Sheeran's in the back line this year for North, so that doesn't help. And then you've got no one else really that I like the look of in this range. And then we get down to the Geelong sort of trio almost in a way. They do have Nina Morrison at 1.1, I believe it is. But Prespakis 948k, I was on to her this year, except for the potential news that she's moving into the backline. We'll have to see if that is the case. I've heard rumors of it, so I just want to make sure of it, I would say, in a way, before I definitely switch off of her. But one that I'm definitely concerned about if she does move to the backline, and that's why I've moved to another cat currently in Amy McDonald at that M4 spot, giving me that that flexibility. But I do think that there is value with Amy McDonald. Let me get the right McDonald, because there's so many McDonalds here. And you can see here that after the 72, well, the 79 and 81 here, you can see that, yeah, her points per minute were just down last year. She had an injury as well. And so, yeah, I think that she's going to potentially get back to her best, which her best could easily be if she gets back to this 1.57. Let me actually just duplicate this and find a 1.57 score. If I go to Gardner, that might be 1.57 points per minute. The 1.57 points per minute in the modern game, if we look at it, is about this 102. Well, probably it might be that 114, but it might be somewhere in that. Whereas obviously she's not going to probably score that much, and she probably doesn't have the TOG to be able to do that. Yeah, it doesn't look like it. Her 102, her 1.57 is probably actually around about the 101, 102. Whereas if she does that at that role, she'll be absolutely flying. That'll be near enough what McCarthy did. If we just look quietly at what McCarthy did, McCarthy went 102. If she does that exact same jump, Amy McDonald, then she'll be the pick of the year. So that's why I do like it. There's some injury value inbuilt there, but also she just is playing a little bit down from her best last year, only 1 ton, whereas she had 3 in 1 the year before that. So you can see here 2 basically injury games there. If you take them out, then her points per minute does sort of regulate a little bit more. She did have this 1 bad game, but you can see here in all these games to start the year, 1.61, 1.3, 1.38, 1.81, 8.4, sorry, and then you had a 0.96 when she came back. And you can sort of see that she's going at more around that 1.3, 1.4 points per minute, which at sort of around that 80 or so TOG, that is around that 90 or so, you would think. So yeah, I could see her returning to sort of this 90, 91 at least, maybe even potentially more if she can just get upwards and get her tackle game back, because that's where a lot of her points are missing at the moment, and that's where she can catch that back up. But we'll see how that goes, and that's why she's one that I would definitely watch out for this year. Kennedy, no. Dempsey, no. Webster, etc. One of the ones that I did want to just flag, and I should probably get rid of all these favorites from last year, is Ellie McKenzie. She did start in the game, was it yesterday or Friday, etc., that they had Richmond. So definitely one to potentially look at as a breakout star. If we look at Ellie McKenzie, she's definitely one that could be that one that you really look at and you go, yeah, she's the one that finally breaks out. Her points per minute haven't been the greatest, but she could take that next step this year, which we've seen in sort of flashes here. A 98 game, an 81, 84, etc. We've seen it in flashes, but we haven't really seen it sustained for the whole year. So it will be interesting if she can do that. And that's why I sort of want the flexibility, because I know that there's going to be someone. I just don't know who it's going to be at that M4 slot that's going to go off, because someone's going to go 95, 100. It's just a matter of, is it McKenzie? Is it McDonald? Is it Prespakis, etc. like that? And then that's why this range is definitely a range that we need to really look at for midfielders, I feel like. And then I'm pretty sure Breed is currently injured as well, so there's no point really looking at that. So Hoy could take another step as a 20-year-old, 56 average for the year. Last year, she could take that next step, but I don't really think so. And then you're kind of already looking at these very... I'd rather trade these sort of 690, 700k players in later in the year, or sorry, a game or two in, rather than starting with them, because it's very hard to get up to those sort of those midfielders for that M4 slot that are averaging 70, starting at 70 price rather than starting at that 50 price tag. So that's why I'd rather do that. Bruton could be an interesting one, given that she's done it in the past, but I just don't think so, given that she's sort of had 2 or so down years from memory. But let's just quickly look at Bruton there, because I think she's taken on a new role. You can see that role just dropped out, and her scoring just dropped away. And so, yeah, that's a no from me on her currently, unless she gets a change in role. And then Darcy Maloney is potentially one that could do something, but she's already said in preseason interviews that she's more of that mid-forward role. So that's not what I really like to hear, to be honest with you. Now we sort of get into the rookie land of things. And the first one that and I will say this with the rookies as well, is that if we actually go by price point here, it's probably going to be better. And if we close in on the price point of 400 to 499k and do that. So with the rookies, it's kind of hard to, in the preseason, without in games that don't really have the likes of scoring, as well as the whole West Coast midfield for yesterday's game didn't have any of their top 3 mids, so it kind of made maybe the rookies stand out a little bit more, etc., than they should have. So we kind of, if there's 10 or 15 rookies that are doing well, there's probably only 4 or 5 that are in their true role when everyone is back. So I think Centra is a consensus pick with her junior form, if I even want to or even bother to. Let's just quickly bring this up for you guys for Ash Centra. If we look at her analysis, you can basically see she's been the best player for the better half of 24-30 months at her age group, and you can see in the Coates League she averaged 27 touches, 4 marks, 4 tackles, and a goal a game, which is just dumb numbers. And even in the under 18s, she averaged 19 touches, 3 marks, 3 tackles, and a goal a game, which is still pretty decent numbers. That's what's that, 27 or sort of 26, 46, and then probably 8, so that's 54, plus another about 10, maybe 11, so that is like 65. So he's still averaging in the under 17s like 71 points or 70 points per game. And then you have as well in the Coach Talent League where she's averaging like 100, so you can see the points there. So she's definitely one. O'Hare, I don't like as much compared to other midfielders. I feel like she's going to go back into the back line for the likes of Melbourne, but I'm not 100% sure on with that role. So that's why I don't like it as much, and why I'm probably going to stay clear of her. I think there will be someone that pops, and O'Hare is not one that I'm looking at, to be honest with you. Howley is definitely someone that I think I need to just spell this right here to get Sarah Howley up. It's going to be that, isn't it? I might have spelled it slightly wrong. Let's just bring her up here so that, yeah, if we look at this. So Sarah Howley, a midfielder, and if we look at the analysis here, you'll see that she doesn't really, one of the things with her, a lot of touches, not that much of a tackle base, which is a slight problem, I would say. Coach Talent League as well. That was in under 18. She averaged 28 from 3 games. In Coach Talent League, she actually averaged the 5.9 tackles across 15 games. She did 5 the year before, so it's actually not as bad as what I thought it was. So yeah, it's not too bad. I'm just trying to see if there's anything about tackle in here. Doesn't look like there's much about her tackling, which it doesn't really matter too much there. But yeah, we're kind of with these rookies, a lot of the point scorers will probably be those tacklers in general, rather than the girls that can just get a lot of the footy, because the girls that can get a lot of the footy generally get put to other positions or just struggle a little bit in the first couple of their first year to get anything on the board. So that's why probably Howley I'm maybe sticking clear of a little bit. Zippy Fish, I know what I just said exactly, just basically says I should stay clear of it, but she's going to get a role at Sydney, which is fruitful for how they play. She's going to get she could honestly average close to what like Ella Heads did, because that's going to be a similar-ish role to what she's and scoring to what she's probably going to do. So that's why I think at 404k she's up there with Centra as the top two midfielders. And then it really becomes a question if we go down to the 300 to 399k bracket, where to go from there. And that's based on structure. So I'll use my current team as a reference. A lot of people have Marinoff, Rowbottom, Bowers, and I will get rid of window here just to enable me to make some maneuvers here. Some teams will have, say, a Riddell in this spot, or a Gardner, or a Gardiner in that spot there, and that'll mean that Bowers is obviously, etc. on price point. Bowers is M4, so they'll have a 4 big midfield, 4 big primo midfield. Some people, like you saw with me, will have a McDonald in there, and that will provide more flexibility in terms of jumping on the big risers and the movers and the value that presents itself in season. But it does mean that they're probably missing out on a little bit of point scoring comparatively, but also they make it up elsewhere. But then it's more of a value play there. And then you've also got some people that will go down the rookie route. And if we just go to Stat Center here, leave without saving, and then we go to the midfielders again, and then we go back to the price point, 300, 399k. Some people will be looking for that third midfielder because they want to go two midfielders that are rookies on field, which is risky. We saw last year that even though it did sort of work, it didn't also work with the crop that they had. And I don't think the midfield crop is as strong this year, or the midfield classified crop is as strong this year. But we might get some second year players that are still rookie priced, like a Ransom, actually break out or something like that. But if we look at and I think I already said this, but I'll say this again, there will probably be someone that pops that I haven't mentioned, etc., or maybe gone against. It's just hard to figure out the true roles for a lot of these players. So yeah, we just have to wait and see. And I do want to also see more from the community around it, because a lot of people are watching practice games, etc., watching training and getting more info on players' roles, because for these type of players, you want someone that's just in that inside mid, tackling away and everything. So we're really looking for that that strong inside mid, and that could be there isn't really, and that's where I'm saying this again, there isn't really that strong inside mid as there was last year. It felt like outside of the two obvious ones. So looking at it here, like Painter could get a role, etc. If we look at Lucia Painter, and we look at her Painter there, hopefully this shows up for this. Lou Painter here, if we go and look at her sort of her strength and everything, and look at her stats, etc. For the under 18, she averaged 17 and 6.7 tackles, and then here 7 point. So this is probably the one. Painter's probably the one that I'd watch and wait. It's just a problem of that West Coast midfield who's actually in it, because if she gets that role in the midfield, she could be that third midfielder that we technically want. And definitely one that is probably the standout, I would say, option in a weaker West Coast line. I know West Coast finished, 8th, 9th, 10th, somewhere around there, I think. But yeah, if we do get her, let me actually just check where did they finish last year. So if we do get her playing midfield, 13th. So one of the sides third, yeah, okay, not too bad. But yeah, she is probably the one that I'd look at most, even though she's 396k. you can also move on to someone else a lot easier rather than going for a 300k player and getting stuck. Because one thing that happens quite a lot, because there's less bench options, and there's also the cash moves quicker in the women's compared to the men's in cash generation, you can get very much stuck with 300k players. And that's why I really want to stay away from the 300k players at all costs, to be honest with you. So that's why I'd rather a painter, because after 1 week, we've seen players go up 100, 120k. If painter goes up 50k, then she's a simple swap to a player that's like 300k that's gone up 100k. So I'd rather that than go with the 100k, have to potentially mess up structure just to get a rookie in, etc. Whereas if I go with sort of always the more expensive option, etc., go for the hunt for the mid-pricer that's value rather than the rookie and the primo, I feel like the flexibility there to be able to maneuver around is a lot more beneficial, and a lot of people will get stuck with dead rookies. So yeah, painter is probably the one that I'd advocate most for if you were to go down that third rookie in the midfield, or just in the utility spot. Like, that's something I'll probably end up with. I'll probably end up with Harris in the R2 spot, and then painter in the midfield slot there. So that's probably what I'll do, unless there's a bunch of solo rucks that are min price. And then you've got, not really Rashid. I don't think gets a run in that Adelaide midfield. We saw what Boilu did last year, or 2 years ago, was it now? I think it was last year. And she was one coming out of the draft that was really highly rated. So I don't want to go there. And then there's, Patterson maybe, but I don't think there's anyone really that I'm looking at going, you could turn heads, etc. about that. And I don't think there'll be an option in the midfield for Hawthorn, even though they did lose Matilda Breed. Let's actually just quickly look at Lavina Cox. We just go to Lavina. I'm going to butcher this anyway, so let's just see if that's, there we go. And then we go to here and we look at her stats as well for Vic Country in the Nationals. 2.5 tackles for Coates League, 11 games, 5 tackles per game, so maybe there, but I don't think so. But could be a decent one to look at potentially. VFLW, 1 game, 18 touches, 1 tackle, etc. So maybe there's something there, but I would be more looking at painter just off the top of my head here, looking at them all. And and you can also see I wouldn't be going for many of these girls that have already played in the league and shown barely anything. Maybe Ransom, but I don't think so with any of them. So that's pretty much it. Barwick is one that could potentially get that role based on Western Bulldogs having some outs. But again, I'd rather trade into her after a week than have her from the start and she goes, say, 30, 40, 50 and doesn't really make us cash much quickly, because over the course of 3 or so weeks, there's a potential that these girls make a differential of potentially somewhere close to 200k on other rookies if you get the right rookie. And 200k is that upgrade in that midfield from sort of that 90, 95 to that 105, 110. And that's 10 points per game that you can put on awfully quickly in the midfield, which is the area that we need to really look at. But anyway, that is the video there going through all of the AFLW midfielders. I will go back through in a week or two's time once we get all of the data for the practice games and stuff like that, and we get actual numbers and stats. I'll go back through the rookies in more depth. That'll be a standalone video itself. But if you guys did enjoy sort of the strategy behind the AFLW Fantasy Midfield, remember to like and subscribe, turn the notification bell on so you know when I upload, and I will see you guys back here for my team review later tonight. So I'll see you guys for AFL Fantasy. So I'll see you guys then. Bye, guys.